Hello, here we are again for 34th episode of the year of being 70. And this was the idea of my longtime friend, my childhood friend Lucy McCarra, who is in Norfolk, UK, and I'm in Amsterdam, Lisette Schuitenmaker in the Netherlands. And this morning, upon waking up and grabbing my phone, I saw that Lucy had sent in an idea for this week's episode, which is if you gave a dinner party and you could invite three people you might know, you might not know, they might be alive, they might have passed on, who would you invite? And so this is also a question, to you who are listening. If you gave a dinner party and you could invite anyone to sit at your table and have a conversation with, who would you invite? So, yay. Let's give them some time.
Yes, you can think about it while we talk and put your suggestions in the comments. We'd love to hear. And also why you would choose them too. Be interesting to know.
I think it's also always interesting to observe my own thought process because my initial response was, oh, now what? Now what has she thought up? How do I have three people? And then, whilst getting ready for the day, all of a sudden my three people came into my head, as a formed trio. They have a connection. And so, yeah, I'm always in awe of how these things work. So how about you? How did you come up with this suggestion, Lucy? And then
As
who's
as you said,
your first person?
it's sort of I was just thinking, oh, we haven't got a subject for tomorrow late last night. So it just popped into my head. I do not know how my subconscious does that thing, and I'm sure yours does too. So I mean, I didn't know, sometimes I make suggestions and you don't like them, so we don't do that.
That
Or
happens.
you
That
do.
happens.
Yes. So I just sort of thought, oh, well, I know it's late. I hope I don't wake her up, but I'll send this over. And I hadn't when I thought of the concept, I had not got three people in my head at all. So
Ah,
I've had to think about that this morning too. But then mine, I had two pretty quickly, and then a third one kind of came later. So yeah, we'll see. And my vision was that we would give this dinner party together, so we would have a group of six, well, eight of us around the table.
oh, I
So
did
it'd be
not
interesting
count
to
on
see
that.
if our guests how they would interact with each other as well.
Well, that wasn't really in my concept. And now I'm really wedded to my three people
That's
because
fine. No, it
it
doesn't
would be
matter. We can
lovely to
have our
speak about
individual
them.
dinner
And
parties, or we can do it together.
yeah.
So who is your first one then?
So the three is a trio that they have nothing to do really with one another, but for all passing away, three men all passing away in the year 2008. And it really felt to me, you know, uh, that as if I'm in a forest and three of the biggest trees in my forest fell. And then I was standing there. So in a way, it gave me space to grow. But in a way, it was also like these three men were protective. And it was wonderful. So the first, I'll just go in the order in which they passed. So the first was called Ron. And Ron, actually, he was an American, a gay man who'd come to the Netherlands and led an adventurous life and then found love and then started a kind of green grocery. And because he loved to cook, it was also kind of a takeaway little shop around the corner from me. And in the beginning, there were people like someone I vaguely knew would sit with him in the kitchen, and I would be a bit like envious of, wow, she obviously has this connection, and I'm kind of this uppity person, this who finds it sometimes people kind of project things onto me that I'm kind of, snobbish or arrogant or standoffish. And so this making contact and how can I befriend everyone and anyone has been a theme. And then at some point over the years we got more friendly and then he fell ill. And at that time, I had finished a Barbara Brennan School of Healing. I had my BSc in healing science, and this one woman who would sit in his kitchen and had already befriended him uh, was ill, and I would give her healings, and the healings would alleviate her pain. She would be in constant pain, and for a few hours after she'd been with me, she would be free of pain, which was a miracle to her. And then, so she'd said something to Ron, and he was not a believer in any of this. But he was very angry. He was very angry that he was dying. He had so much life in him, so much lust for life. He just wanted to live. And so then he was already so sick. I used to come to his house and kind of have a chat and do a healing. And And it was beautiful to see like his anger kind of dissipated and turned into gratitude. He kind of made his peace with God, although he did not believe in God, not as a man with a beard on a cloud. He did not really, but still nearing death, there was something there. And yeah, it was a very beautiful process. And as you may know, I've always been so curious about what's before life and after life. So I would love to see him again. I just miss him. He died on the 8th of January 2008, and I would love to have him at my table and bring some of his wonderful dishes.
That's a lovely story.
How about you?
Well,
Who's
I've
your
gone down a
first person?
completely different route, and I have gone for famous people that everybody will have heard of. So completely different. I don't know any of them, haven't known any of them personally, and that's kind of why I want them to come to dinner. So my first one is perhaps the biggest writer of all time, and it's William Shakespeare. So I
Ah,
would like to invite Shakespeare to dinner because there are so many. Well, for a start, I mean, was an unquestionable genius. And so many of his turns of phrase and quotes and words even are just, we just use them in the English language and we don't even realize that they come from Shakespeare. They're just absolutely embedded in. So I kind of want to know, we had that discussion about what's in your mind. What does your mind, I want to know how his mind worked, that he could produce such extraordinary words and it's the right. I mean, his plays are fantastic, obviously. I mean, and they go on working and but it's not so much about. I mean, some of the characters I think are extraordinary and absolutely kind of everlasting.
like
Certain
who?
of
Like who? Like which ones? Putting you on the
characters.
spot now.
Yes, yes. So characters like Falstaff, for instance, the big kind of characters, the comedies, like in Twelfth Night, Malvolio, it's just such a beautiful kind of
I know
portrayal.
nothing. I know nothing of these. I don't know who Falstaff is. I don't know the place you name.
No, no,
I know
no.
only the obvious ones. But you in the UK really live with this man and his work, right?
Yeah, well, yes, I wonder how much we do it. I mean, when I don't know, when I
Hmm.
was younger, I don't know, theatre and plays seem to be much more part of the national conversation and culture, and I'm not sure how much they are. I mean, they are obviously, and they go on being produced and all that sort of thing, but I don't know that theatre has such a big place anymore. But anyway, yes, nonetheless, and he did, create some wonderful female characters as well. I mean, often they kind of, I mean, two of the best of them are they dress as men during the course of the play in order to have agency.
Hmm.
So like Olivia in Twelfth Night and Rosalind in Much Ado About Nothing, for example. But it's not just the work that I want to talk to him about. It's
No.
about what was it like in Elizabethan England. And, I mean, I could
When
ask.
was that? Elizabethan England for people who don't know that. When was that?
Oh, sorry, sorry. So that was the sort of late 1500s, I suppose. Yes, I don't actually don't know Shakespeare's his dates, and I don't think he was. I think he was probably in his 50s when he died. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, he was an extraordinary man because he came from a sort of small town, Stratford-on-Avon, and came to London to be an actor and a playwright. And he was also, massively successful. He was an entrepreneur. He made an awful lot of money
Mm.
doing what he did. So, not only brilliant plays, but incredibly successful and popular ones. And I think he was also an actor and he had his own theatre. So, he was a
Wow.
businessman as
Yeah.
well. And I'm kind of fascinated by that combination of creativity and kind of business acumen, and how that worked then. And I would also love to know what he actually looked like, because we've only got this. I mean, we have two or three kind of images of him as somebody with a high forehead and receding hair, and it says nothing really. I would love to know, what he was really like, what he sounded like, what his voice was like. Um,
Mm.
and and
How
and I
he
think people
spoke.
had.
Did he speak in the rhymes? Did he speak like he
Yes,
wrote?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Did he naturally converse in rhyming couplets? Who knows? But then
Yeah.
he wrote these amazing poems as well, the sonnets, and which are extraordinary too. So just very, very, the greatest mind in my. I mean, obviously there are, other great minds around, but for me, that's he's probably the greatest creative mind that I would like to meet and unpick
Hmm.
and talk to. So that's my first
A
guess.
wonderful idea. And the most Shakespeare I heard was when my friend Robert Alfred enrolled in the company with Richard Olivier, who was the son of Laurence Olivier,
Oh,
the great actor. And Richard has leadership programs where, the plays of Shakespeare, you know, showed various types of leadership. And my
yes,
friend Robin could recite like, and I was like, wow, I know nobody in the Netherlands who can recite anything. We don't have anything like that. We have our paintings of the 17th century, but you
yes.
really have Shakespeare that is ongoing, someone whose plays are still played 500 years later. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh no, that's right. Yes, no, it's absolutely true. His plays have been used for so many things. I mean, absolutely
Yeah.
leadership, business, concepts, all, you can turn his work
Yeah.
to to anything you want, really. It's so
I'd
it's
like to come to that dinner party, but I would have to read up. I would have to read up on him.
oh no, I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm sure he'd be very happy just chatting to telling you
Yeah,
what
I
is,
don't know. I don't know.
but
Such a brilliant mind. Yes. Okay. Well, I'm still curious what people who listen, whether they've gone for people they knew, like me, or for people they did not know but admire.
would
I'd
like to know.
like to know, would like to revive for an evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who is your second
Well,
guest?
my second person is also a brilliant mind. He is my friend Eckhart Winzer, who died on the 21st on 2008, suddenly. And he was a businessman. He was in software because before anybody knew what software was, and started a company and had this idea, how many people can you be friendly with? Around 30. Around 30, you can kind of remember, did they have a baby? Was it a boy or a girl? When did they go on holiday? And so when his company employed a 31st person, he did cell division. And so then there were two teams, one in the east of the Netherlands, one in the west of the Netherlands. And so that cell division concept was, a very, yeah, I mean, novel idea. And another thing he thought of was he was very concerned about the environment and about our effects on it, and had developed a method for accountancy for the effects of his company on the environment, and published that alongside with the financial accounts. He published natural accounts. And then also he said, why do we actually have value added tax? We want people to participate. We want people to work. But then we want value added, right? What we don't want is value extracted. So any pollution, anything you take from the earth as if it is for free, why do we tax that? So that would be the tax on extracted value. And his proposal was, and he explained this to me in 1992. I was at work on a Sunday in my office, and he came by to kind of lure me away and say, "Come on, let's talk about real things here." And he said, and then the VAT was at 19%. So he said, if we take 20 years and every year we do a percentage, then, the whole industry and the whole tax authorities and everything can adapt, and we will have a completely different tax system because money has cybernetic power. It steers where we go. And it's still alive after his death, where I was like in tasked with two others, with his daughter and his business manager, to kind of yeah, do I don't know how that's all called, but to engage with his will. And it took us 7 years. He had so many investments. He had so many, yeah, things, and then we decided to make a foundation for this piece of work. And one of his wonderful the people he employed, a wonderful woman, is still leading that. So that is now 17. Well, she started I think in 2010, so about 15 years she's been researching and lobbying. And it's still a very good idea. It's still a very good idea. It is in the programs. It was in the programs of two of our parties in our recent elections of our
Really?
government that now fell. But so I hope it will come again. And with everything that's happening in the world, the attention is now very much on war and defense and spending for defense, and not so much on climate and how we are affecting the weather and the ice caps and biodiversity or extinction of animals as we speak. So I would love to know, how does he see this now? Where, yeah, what would he do? Where would he, yeah, put his attention? Yeah, I would love
Yes.
to have a conversation with him about, all these years in between when there have been so many COPs on climate change,
Yeah.
and so there is more awareness. It's like more normal, but our behavior hasn't really changed. So
No, and so no, I was going to ask you, so has that concept sort of moved, have you been able to make inroads into actual, the government and power, if you like, where it could be introduced as a potential tax? But it sounds as if you've got two, even if they're not in power at the moment, two parties who have got that on
yeah,
their
yeah, they're not in power. They're smaller
no.
parties, more aware parties in our multi-party system in the Netherlands. Well, what is one thing is when he first explained it to me, there were very few people who could understand this concept. And when he died, I was actually asked me, can you explain the concept to, I mean, it was a 1,000 people funeral. It was a huge event.
Wow.
And now everybody gets this concept. So there is and it's so interesting how, an idea is being,
Yes.
there are these four phases of it being kind of not understood and negated, and then people get angry about it, and then they accept it. So I think this idea is accepted, and now people say, well, it's too difficult or whatever. But I think it is still around as an idea.
And
And
it's sort of yes. Oh, that's brilliant. Interesting
yeah.
that you were charged by him to kind of keep working. This seems to happen to you because your friend with the book idea asked
Yeah,
you to carry that on. You seem
true.
to be
That's
sort of
true.
you
I'm
seem
charged by the dead to do the
yes,
unfinished business. Yeah, well,
exactly.
he charged me with, yeah, with his will, and then yeah, actually his business director came up with this brilliant idea to put some money towards this foundation. And I haven't been in touch with them much, but I just got an email saying, we're still here, we're making progress. You'll very soon hear of us again. So that's great.
Fantastic. So
And
get
I really hope that Europe and the EU can take the lead in these things.
right, right.
Yeah.
Have yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So will he and your first guest, will they get on well together, do you think?
Oh, they will get on well because they both smoked pot. They're both hippies at heart. They're both rebels. Oh, they will get on famously.
So your
Yeah.
dining room or wherever you're having your dinner will have a heavy smell of weed
Yeah,
hanging
no, no,
over
not
it.
here, not in the house, it will be maybe in their clothing, but not, no, not in my house. But no, they'll have a good laugh. I thought we have this kind of round table that seats four, so I wasn't inviting you.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm
Just
happy
gonna
not to
have
be
this,
invited.
Dutch
Oh,
dinner.
yes, well,
So,
that's
who
a
is
nice.
your second
Oh,
person?
so okay, so my second one, and I don't know if she'll get on with the first one. I think she will, because I'm pretty sure she admired him as much as most people. So my second guest is Virginia Woolf.
Hmm.
So you know Virginia Woolf, have you? I don't know if
I
you
know of Virginia
know
Woolf.
of
I
her.
have read, I think I have a little booklet here, To the Lighthouse. And of course, I
Yes,
have
yes, that's one of her most famous novels. So she wrote
yeah,
novels essentially in the 90, oh gosh, I don't even know her dates that well. In the 1930s, I think, sort of maybe 20s. I think she may just have been born at the end of the 19th century, but yes, possibly. So
yeah,
she was a rather upper class woman born into a sort of upper class family, and she retained. She was an absolutely brilliant writer, in my opinion, and many people's opinion, obviously. But as a person, I don't know how much I would actually like her. I think she retained quite a lot of her kind of upper class snobbery, to be honest. But she was part of that artistic creative group with her sister Vanessa Bell, who was the
yeah,
artist, called the Bloomsbury Group.
yeah,
And that holds a kind of fascination for me, and that included Keynes, the
yeah,
economist, and
yeah.
other artists, Roger Fry, and many of them, and they all sort of lived in Bloomsbury for a time, and then
And
they sort of
Bloomsbury is what? Is that a village or
it's
is it
it's
a
no
part
no
of London?
Bloomsbury is an area of London, not
Yeah.
a it didn't used to be a particularly smart area. I think I'm right in saying even at that point it was. I mean, it's got lovely houses and it's sort of where the British Museum is. It's kind of around that area
Hmm.
to kind of locate it a bit. So yes, it's got lovely big houses where these wealthy families lived with their servants and
And various levels, I would think.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And I would love to. I mean, I went through a phase when I was probably in my 20s of reading Virginia Woolf's diaries. People kept giving them to me because I was reading them every Christmas and birthday. I would get another volume of her diary. So I kind of feel that, well, for a time I was very immersed in that sort of world. And her novels were, they seem quite ordinary, if you like, at the moment, but they were kind of stream of consciousness, not in the way that James Joyce was with Ulysses, which is still, I think, pretty hard to read. Her novels are very easy to read and but they took place in just perhaps a single day or a short period of time, and the detail and the kind of what's going on in people's heads as opposed to lots of incident were was very new at the time. And where I also feel that I have a connection with her was that she started her own publishing company.
Aha.
So I would like to, and she and her husband, Leonard Woolf, started, it was called the Hogarth Press, because at the time they lived in a house called Hogarth House. I think that's right, in Richmond or somewhere, and a completely different part of London. And yes, so she published, obviously published other novelists, and she was very supportive of other, new novelist literature, all that sort of thing. She had extraordinary relationships with people. I mean, I think she was essentially a lesbian, and she had a relationship with an even more aristocratic woman called Vita Sackville West. But she remained married to Leonard, who was absolutely devoted to her. But she was very delicate mentally. She suffered from really severe depression and had sort of episodic breakdowns. And eventually she committed suicide because she could feel another one coming on. I think it was just in the beginning of the war, and they by that time they had a country house in Sussex, and she filled her pockets with stones and walked down to the stream, the river, and
Hmm.
just walked in. So
Wow.
again, I would love to kind of talk to her about how her mind worked, how her creativity happens, and yet also, she was, I mean, I think Leonard was more the businessman, but she was part of this enterprise, the Hogarth Press, which,
And she wanted to get other people published,
yes,
like you
exactly.
do. So I see very much how your guests are a reflection of both the author that you are and a publisher and the entrepreneur that you are.
Yes, yes, exactly. I think that is the link. But also with her, I would love to just hear about what it was actually like to be part of the Bloomsbury Group, what London was like in the 1930s before the war, and that sort of that ambiance again. It's sort of somewhere that I kind of live in my head occasionally, but of course I don't really know what it's like. So just like Elizabethan England, I'd like to know, what it was, what it developed into at that point. So I would love to have her to my dinner. I mean, it would be very overwhelming to have these geniuses sitting around my table. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
I
to
don't
think
think
what
I'd
to
have much
cook.
to say. I just
Yeah.
ask them questions, but it would be fascinating, and also to see if there was kind of interaction, and if they kind of thought about creativity in the same sort of way, and how characters and plays, novels, whatever kind of came into their heads. I would love to know the process.
Somebody said the other day to me, asked, do you know the difference between Mozart, the way Mozart composed and the way Beethoven composed? It wasn't you, was it, who
No,
said
it
that?
definitely wasn't me. I don't, you know me. I don't like music. I wouldn't have asked you that.
Yeah, so Mozart heard like one instrument and then wrote for one instrument and then
Right.
wrote all the other instruments, whereas Beethoven heard the whole thing. So that was when he was
Yes.
turning deaf. I mean, of course, he could hear music, but he still heard the music in his
In
head.
his head,
And he
yeah.
basically wrote all the instruments at the same time.
Yes, yes,
That's very different. The creative process
it
can be
is,
very,
isn't
very
it?
different.
Yes, that is, and that's fascinating. I've never heard that before, but
I
that's
hadn't.
amazing. Yes, so Mozart
Yeah.
started with, I guess, a melody more than, and,
Yeah.
and then filled in the kind of
And then
orchestration.
build it from there.
Yeah,
So also, yeah, with
yes,
writing, you
and
start in
actually, when you
fiction, do you
think
start?
when you think
Yeah,
about their music, you can see that I
yeah,
mean, on the whole, Mozart is more kind of melodic. There's one
yeah,
main voice, whatever the instrument is. I mean,
yeah.
as I say, I'm no great musician or music appreciator, but
I
but I
know.
but I can hear it and understand it, in a
Yeah.
kind of
But
intellectual
it's
way.
also about, the way creativity works. Do people have like this whole thing, or do they have
Yeah,
characters and then have the characters interact and go somewhere and surprise them as an author?
exactly. Yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
I want to ask how that works for you, but we also have a third guest, of course.
yes. No, tell us who your third
Yeah,
guest
so
is.
my third guest is my father,
Oh, how
who
nice.
died on the 29th of July in 2008. And because they came as a trio, it would be really lovely to speak with my father again. He was born in 1925. So if he had lived, he would turn 100 this year. As it was, he was almost 83. And yeah, he was he knew my friend Eckhart, the entrepreneur, the software entrepreneur, and the rebel for a good cause businessman, and much admired him. And he did not know my greengrocer friend and would be a bit, um, I don't know, like they would have to find each other in a way. But yeah. Yeah, my father had died from a brain tumor that they operated on, but could not take away fully because then they would also probably take other, brain matter. And then in the night after the operation, that was kind of successful. Um, he had a stroke and then was paralyzed, left part of his body was paralyzed then. And my parents had been so innocent about this operation because they thought, oh, the doctors will just, take a little spoon and kind of spoon this thing out a scoop of ice. And then next week, they had a cruise planned and everything, and they were not prepared at all for him dying. And yeah, and we had in my sense, so the death of Ron, was expected. Eckhart died of a massive heart failure suddenly, very suddenly, and also he was 68, almost 69, so I'm already older than he is, which is somehow strange. And so for my father, after the operation, I mean, he was bedridden, and we had actually a very beautiful, beautiful time together as a family. And in the final 4 or 5 weeks, my sister and I took turns sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and we had these amazing conversations. Did I ever tell you about the final conversation I had with my father?
No, no, tell me.
It was not a final conversation, but on one of these nights, no, it was. Yeah, so at some point he thought he had died. And he woke up and in the middle of the night he said, "Oh, I'm dead, am I not?" And I said, "No, you're still alive." And he said, "How do you know?" And I said, "Well, I'm alive and we're having this conversation, so you're also alive." And he kind of he did not find that good evidence. And then he looked around and he said, "I must concede it's a big coincidence that here they have the same paintings on the wall that I have in the room where I'm." And so that was like, in a way, so funny also.
That's brilliant.
And yeah, it was just one of these strange, quirky moments. And he lived for another 3 weeks and then slowly passed away. But yeah, it would just be lovely to see him again.
Of course, of course. That's what you say about him waking up and thinking he died. My mum, who is, as we know, very, very old, and she keeps saying that too. I woke up this morning and I thought I died, and I was so annoyed when,
When it hadn't
and,
happened.
and I keep trying to ask her, what did it feel like when
Yeah.
you thought you died? And she can't really. I said, did it feel like you've sort of separated from your body? Because if you think you've died and you're still existing, what
Yeah.
did that feel like? And I can't, she can't tell me. She
Yeah. Is
hasn't
there
really
like
been able to
a
tell me.
separation, or do you then see your body
Yes.
somewhere else, or perceive
I
it
don't
if
think
you
it's
don't
that,
have
but I
eyes
think,
anymore? But
yeah,
yeah.
no, I think it was a sort of sense of peace, which then got shattered when her carer came in to, get her up.
Yeah.
So
So a sense of peace is actually a good thing to live toward,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but then she's a bit annoyed that
Yes,
it
she,
still has to do more days
yeah,
here.
indeed. So what would you most like to ask your father if you had one question you could ask him now? What would you most like to?
I don't know. I would just want to kind of describe my life to him and see. And so there's a question, am I still the girl looking for approval of my father? But I don't think it is that. I think he took enjoyment from the way I develop myself, much to his surprise, much to my surprise too. Very often, last week I had to kind of lead this annual general meeting, and I stand there and I go like, "Wow, has the shy girl turned into this person who can actually do this?" And so he was not so much into impact investing and the regenerative movement, but he found it interesting. And And the most beautiful, he gave me the most beautiful compliment when I turned 50, which is now over 20 years ago. When at the dinner table with only men, I celebrated my 50th with only men, and he said, I often don't understand what you're on about, but I read about it in the papers 10 years later. So I would just, yeah, want to show him how this field has matured and see what he would think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure he would be extremely proud.
And that's a sweet thought to have, I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
of
it's
course.
sweet if you think
Of course.
make our parents proud,
Yeah.
which is yeah, but he would also be interested in how does it work and what are you expecting? And those are always questions that I could never fully answer because he would come more from an economic way of thinking, and I would come more from a kind of generative way of thinking. But I would just love, and I think those three men would have a ball. They would have a really good time.
And sounds wonderful. And another of your all male celebrations where
Yes, another of my
you're the
all-male
princess.
celebrations. There we go.
Yes.
And you, do you have another woman for us?
Yes, my final guest is another, I think, great writer and entrepreneur, J.K. Rowling. So she
Aha.
is the author of the Harry Potter books and the Harry Potter
Yes,
world and the films and everything else. So I think, I mean, she's a very controversial figure at the moment, and I'm not going to go into that. But I mean, I think she's a genius writer. I really do. I think her books are incredible. They may be for children, but they are, I know.
I've read them
Have you?
and
Have you?
enjoyed the movies. I think
Yes,
so many of us adults have to just disappear into that world and go to platform nine, three quarters, and
exactly. I mean, I just
go
think,
into that other world where
yes,
I loved how the people in the paintings would visit,
yes,
go for tea with one another.
yes.
It was an absolutely lovely idea.
I know. I just love her creativity, that sort of, the things she creates out of such a fertile mind, such extraordinary, and, things that are actually quite normal now that were completely bizarre. Now you walk into an airport or a train station and you've got people talking to you out of, the advertisements
Yeah,
are videos and things. But when, you saw that in the movie or read it in the,
yeah,
the talking newspapers and things like that, it was just such an
yeah,
extraordinary idea. And she's
yeah,
sort of, I think great geniuses often do predict, the future in a way.
yeah,
And so I would love to talk to her again about how her ideas came to her and also her incredible persistence, because it's very well known that she was
yeah,
rejected by, loads of publishers before somebody, I mean, the great story is that an assistant picked the manuscript, her first Harry Potter manuscript, up out of the bin, I think almost, and read it and said to her boss, I think you ought to read this. And then she had to go under the name J.K. Rowling because they didn't think that young boys, would buy a book with a woman's name on it if it was about a male young wizard. So, she had to become
yeah,
J.K. Rowling. So, she's been through all sorts of, kind of
yeah,
barriers and stuff. But she is one of the richest women in, well, certainly in the UK. I don't actually know, but she's also given a massive amount to charity. She does an awful lot of, sort of
mm.
good, positive work as well. But she's an extraordinary entrepreneur. I mean, she's built these companies, these businesses that have all sprung out of her imaginative, creative
So
work.
what businesses has she built? Because I know
Oh, I mean,
she's written the books, and but after Harry Potter, has she written anything else?
yes, yes, she has. She writes other books under the name of Robert Galbraith. She writes
Robert Galbraith. So she took a
She took
men's
it, yeah, she
name.
did because she wanted to. She started their detective stories essentially. She has a detective
And do you
called.
enjoy those?
Yes, I love them. Yes, they're really,
Okay.
really complicated. Her detective is called Strike, and he has a woman sort of sidekick assistant called Robin, who is obviously in many ways much cleverer than him. But it's sort of they're a very good pair of characters, and they run a detective agency, and it's all the stories are all very current and very complex and have sort of societal issues embedded within them, which
Hmm.
I enjoy. And they're very good. But the first one she wrote, the first non-children's book she wrote under the name of Robert Galbraith because she really wanted to get a response not as J.K. Rowling. She wanted to see if she, would
But she could have picked a woman's name, so
she
it's
could have done.
interesting, this
I
kind
think
of.
she wanted to completely, sort of throw people off the track,
Yeah, okay.
and not, not.
But what companies has she started?
So, I mean, her companies are all kind of around Harry Potter, I think, but there's
Okay.
Harry Potter World and there's, but they're very, I mean, so that there are like, I mean, there are the theatre productions probably fall into one, and there are the films, and she's
Yeah.
built business. I mean, they're all related, I believe. I mean, I don't know. For all I know, she has other companies that do other things. I have no idea, but she's sort of made them into and then she has these kind of like places, I can't think of the word, but sort of like visitor events, sort of tour, kind of Harry Potter world. And I mean, literally kind of like, going to Disney Studios, it's sort of Harry Potter, the places, the background, it's a tourist attraction, visitor attractions that are apparently very successful, and people love those too. So again, she's just somebody who I have, huge admiration for, both creatively and business wise. I guess I just think she's extraordinary, and I think yeah, she has very strong views about certain things at the moment, which make her quite controversial. But she's
I
she's
have no idea what that
no,
is.
well, let's not
But I
go
think
into that
it's
right
really
now.
good. I mean, it's so interesting that we have, for me, there was this trio of men who
Yes.
kind of suddenly, or not suddenly, but the big trees in my forest who fell away, who kind of also gave me space. And for you, it's like the author entrepreneurs. So I'm really curious and be so curious if people tell us who their three guests are and if there's a thread that they see between them.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
indeed. It would be, yeah. Well,
Oh, great idea, Lucy.
well, it's your turn for next time.
Oh my goodness. Okay. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.